In the quiet village of Elmsmere, nestled between rolling hills and an endless patchwork of meadows, there lived a young girl named Leora. Elmsmere was a place untouched by the rush of the world beyond its forested borders. Every house was built of smooth river stones and thick oak beams, with chimneys that puffed out sweet-scented smoke from warm hearths. And every night, as the stars blinked open like the eyes of the sky, the people of Elmsmere would light their lanterns, placing them gently by their windows. But Leora's lantern was different. Passed down through generations, it was carved from driftwood and set with a crystal orb that glowed not with fire, but with something softer, more mysterious. Her grandmother, Nona Elwyn, had always said it was filled with moonlight whispers, though Leora never quite understood what that meant. One autumn evening, as golden leaves danced on the wind like playful fairies, Leora sat by the window of her cottage, staring at the lantern. She traced the delicate etchings with her finger, curling vines, stars, and something that looked like a feathered wing. The glow inside the orb shimmered more brightly tonight, as if trying to speak. "Leora!" Her grandmother's voice came gently from the rocking chair. "Do you hear it yet?" "Hear what, Nona?" she asked, tilting her head. "The whisper of dreams, dear one. The lantern listens to your heart. And sometimes, if you're very still, it shows you the path your soul is curious to walk." That night, when the moon rose silver and round, Leora placed the lantern by her bed. The room was quiet except for the soft hoot of an owl and the distant rustle of wind in the trees. Her eyelids grew heavy, and the light in the lantern flickered like a candle dancing in the breeze. Then everything changed. A soft humming sound filled the air. The crystal orb glowed a deep violet, then silver blue, and the shadows on the wall began to shimmer. Leora sat up, heart fluttering like a bird. The glow spread across the floor and spilled out the door. She stood, drawn by the gentle pull, and stepped outside. The world had changed. Where once stood a sleepy village now lay a vast, luminous forest. The trees glowed faintly from within, as if lit by fireflies. Petals fell from the sky like snow, soft and fragrant, and the air was warm and filled with the scent of jasmine and honey. Leora turned to find the lantern in her hand. Its light pulsed slowly, leading her toward a path lined with mossy stones and whispering trees. With each step, the hush of the forest wrapped around her like a blanket. The trees whispered in voices soft and musical, speaking in a language she somehow understood. "Welcome, Leora of Elmsmere. Your heart has opened the way." "Where am I?" she whispered, not expecting an answer. "In the Grove of Whispers, a place of memory and dreams." The path led her to a small glade, where a pond shimmered like glass. Above it floated tiny lights, like stars that had fallen just to rest. A creature emerged from the shadows, a fox with silvery fur and eyes that reflected galaxies. "Hello, Leora," the fox spoke without moving its mouth. "I am Mirren, guardian of the grove. You are here because your lantern has awakened." "Awakened? Why now?" "Because your heart is ready to remember. You carry a legacy. This grove, this forest, it remembers everything ever dreamed by your people. And you, dear one, are its next keeper. Leora blinked. Me? But I'm just me. Mirren chuckled, a sound like wind through chimes. Just you is more than enough. Come. There is someone who wishes to see you. He led her to a tree so old and vast that its trunk rose like a mountain. Beneath its roots, nestled in moss, sat a figure cloaked in mist. As Leora approached, the mist cleared. Nona? She gasped. Her grandmother smiled. But it was not the same Nona from Elmsmere. This version of her wore robes of twilight and held a staff woven of moonlight threads. Hello, my little lantern, she said, her voice warm. You've found your way. Leora ran into her arms, and they held each other for a long, long time. Time didn't seem to move in the grove. You have a gift, Leora. You see things others cannot. You feel the songs in the wind and the dreams of trees. This lantern of ours, it doesn't just light paths. It reveals truths. It guides souls. But only if the bearer listens. I want to listen, Leora whispered. I want to learn. Then stay a while. Let the grove speak. Let the stars teach. And when it is time, you will return home, not just to Elmsmere, but to yourself. That night, Leora curled up beside Mirren in a nest of wildflowers. The fox's tail wrapped around her like a shawl, and above them, stars whispered stories older than the moon. As she drifted into sleep within the dream, her real body slept peacefully back in Elmsmere, the lantern glowing steadily beside her bed. Tomorrow would bring new lessons. But for now, the only thing that mattered was the soft hum of the forest, the light of the stars, and the comfort of a story that had only just begun. When Leora awoke, the sunlight didn't greet her. Instead, she was bathed in a gentle glow from leaves high above, filtering a golden light down onto her face. She stretched slowly, the scent of wild herbs and dew filling her lungs. Mirren, the silver fox, was already up, sitting on a stone near the edge of the glade, his tail flicking lazily. Good morning, Leora murmured, rubbing her eyes. Good as every morning in the grove, Mirren replied with a soft grin. But this morning is special. Today, you visit the library beneath the leaves. A library? Her curiosity awakened fully now. But I thought this was a forest, not a place for books. Mirren stood and padded over to her. Ah, but the books of this forest do not live on shelves. They live in roots, petals, and wind. You'll see. They walked together deeper into the woods. The path they followed now was cobbled with fragments of colored glass, each piece shimmering with light and warmth underfoot. The trees they passed began to hum softly as they walked by, as if greeting her. Why do the trees sing? Leora asked, glancing upward where golden canopies danced in silence. They sing your story, Mirren said, and every story ever dreamt. This grove is memory. It listens and it keeps. And sometimes, when someone truly listens back, it speaks. The path opened into a clearing unlike any she had seen. There was no building, no tower. But at its center stood a tree of such magnitude, its branches stretched across the entire sky. It was luminous, like glass dipped in sunlight, and its trunk shimmered with carvings too intricate to describe. "This is the library," Mirren whispered. Leora stepped closer, her fingers brushing the bark. At her touch, the tree responded. A doorway melted open before her, a door shaped not by wood or stone, but light itself. Inside, the air was still and heavy with the scent of lavender and ink. The interior was enormous, much larger than the tree's outer form would allow. It was as if the entire universe had been tucked gently into its heart. Shelves floated in the air, stacked not with books but with glowing orbs, each one pulsing with quiet energy. "These are dream memories," Mirren said. "One for each soul who has passed through the grove. Some ancient, some just born, some not yet even dreamed." Leora approached one of the orbs. It hovered just at her eye level, spinning slowly. She reached out, and as her fingers brushed the surface, images swirled within. A boy sailing on a paper ship across a sea of stars. A dragon curled beneath a mountain of feathers. A laughing girl riding a cloud like a wild horse. "They're beautiful," she breathed. "You can view them, even enter them if your heart is ready. But today, you have your own to find." "My own?" she echoed. Mirren nodded and led her to a spiral staircase made of curling vines and stardust. They climbed higher and higher, past memories that glowed blue, green, gold, and silver. Finally, they reached a single orb resting on a pedestal of woven silver roots. It flickered faintly, pale and uncertain. "This one is yours," said Mirren. Leora stepped forward, breath caught in her throat. As she touched the orb, it flared brightly, then dimmed, then flared again. Within, she saw herself, young and small, sitting by her window with the lantern, staring at the stars. Then another image, her hand outstretched, the trees parting to welcome her. And deeper still, shadows flickering at the edge of a great chasm. "It's not finished," she whispered. "No," said a voice from behind. She turned. A tall woman with silver braids stood behind her. She wore robes of midnight blue, and her eyes held galaxies within them. "I am Archivist Thalia, guardian of the Memory Grove. You, Leora, are to be the next keeper. But your orb flickers because you have not yet chosen." "Chosen what?" Leora asked. Thalia's voice was like rainfall on stone, steady, gentle, unyielding. "Every keeper must choose their vow, what they guard, what they seek. The lantern is your key, but your heart must decide the path." Leora stared at her orb, its flickering light reflecting in her eyes. "I want to keep stories alive," she said softly. "Not just read them, but protect them. Help others remember what they've forgotten." Thalia bowed deeply. "A vow of remembrance. Rare and beautiful." The orb glowed brighter, steadier. A warmth spread through Leora's chest, and for the first time, she felt something shift inside her, like a door unlocking. Mirren padded to her side. "Come, young keeper. The grove will show you what comes next." They left the great tree, and as they stepped back into the forest, the entire grove seemed to shimmer. Flowers turned their heads to her. Trees swayed gently. And above, the sky sparkled with 100 twilight-colored birds flying in quiet formation. Where now? She asked. To the pool of echoes, said Mirren. There your vow will be tested. Leora took a deep breath. She was ready. And deep within the whispering grove, the trees sang louder, the lantern in her hand burning with a steady, soft flame, the light of memory, promise, and dreams. The path to the pool of echoes was unlike any Leora had traveled before. Guided by Mirren, the silver fox, she stepped through an archway of vines laced with glowing blossoms. Each blossom shimmered with hues of violet and pearl, lighting their way in the dim forest light. The air here felt deeper somehow, cooler, but not cold. It hummed with the quiet anticipation of something ancient. As they walked, the silence was not empty. It carried a rhythm, like a slow heartbeat. The trees were older here, twisted and towering, their roots forming bridges and tunnels. Here, the grove spoke in whispers so faint that Leora had to close her eyes just to hear. You're nervous, Mirren said quietly as they descended into a hollow. Yes, Leora admitted, but not afraid. Just not sure what I'm supposed to do. The pool doesn't expect certainty, said Mirren. Only honesty. They emerged into a clearing so still, it felt as though time itself had stopped. In the center was the pool of echoes, a perfectly circular body of water, black as ink and smoother than glass. It reflected not just the sky above, but stars that hadn't been seen in ages. Around the pool were 12 stones, each one carved with a symbol, an eye, a feather, a flame, a drop of water, and others too complex for Leora to understand. This is where keepers come, Mirren said, to see themselves, not as they appear, but as they are. The pool shows your truths, the forgotten, the buried, the hidden. Leora approached the pool and knelt beside it. Her lantern flickered gently, and when she placed it by the water, the orb within it pulsed 3 times. Look in, Mirren whispered. She leaned over the edge and stared into the black mirror. At first, she saw only her reflection, wide-eyed, thoughtful, uncertain. But then the water rippled, though no wind stirred. Her image faded and was replaced by something else, a memory. She saw herself as a child, watching her parents leave on a journey from which they never returned. She felt the weight of that goodbye, how it had settled into her heart like a stone. Then another scene. She was older, sitting in the Elmsmere library, reading aloud to children. Her voice calm, her stories warm. And in her eyes, something brave, something full of longing. More images followed, some joyful, others painful. She saw herself turning away when friends needed her most, but also offering kindness to strangers. She saw her dreams, her fears, and the many small choices that had brought her here. Then the pool stilled again. Her own face returned, but it had changed. She looked older, stronger, and behind her eyes a quiet fire burned, a fire of purpose. The echoes have shown you who you are, said Mirren softly. Now they will ask you who you wish to be. From the center of the pool, a light began to rise. It floated upward like a bubble, then hovered above the surface, an orb of deep blue light, humming softly. Take it, Mirren said. Leora reached out. The moment her fingers touched the light, warmth spread through her chest. She heard voices, not loud, but clear. Do you vow to remember? Do you vow to guard the stories, even when they are painful? Do you vow to listen to the forgotten and speak for the silent? I do, she said, her voice steady. The orb sank into her chest, and her lantern blazed white for a moment, then dimmed to a soft silver glow. You have accepted your path, Viren said. Now the grove will accept you. Suddenly, the stones around the pool began to shine. A wind rushed through the clearing, not harsh, but full of music. The trees leaned inward, and the stars above pulsed in rhythm. From the shadows stepped Thalia, the archivist. Behind her, a procession of other beings, keepers, it seemed, each cloaked in the colors of dusk and dawn. They formed a circle around Leora. Leora of Elmsmere, Thalia said, you have seen yourself. You have chosen. Will you carry the lantern not just as a light, but as a promise? I will, Leora replied. Then rise, keeper of remembrance. As she stood, the lantern in her hand shifted. Its wooden frame deepened in color, and new carvings etched themselves into its surface, symbols of her vow. It pulsed with her heartbeat now, alive in a way it had never been before. The circle of keepers bowed to her, and one by one they faded into the forest, their roles fulfilled for now. Mirren padded forward, his eyes gleaming. You've done well. Leora took a deep breath. Is it over? No, he said with a knowing smile. It's just beginning. As they walked back through the whispering woods, the grove seemed brighter. Flowers bloomed in their wake. Trees leaned in to touch her lantern with their leaves. Even the sky shimmered with a gentler hue. And in her heart, Leora felt something new, not just wonder, but belonging. This was her place, her purpose, her story to live. In the days following her vow, the Whispering Grove changed for Leora. Paths she had never seen before now opened before her. The trees bowed as she passed. Birds landed on her shoulders like old friends. The lantern she carried no longer merely glowed. It guided, drawing her to places with stories yet to be heard. Her mornings began with lessons from Thalia. The archivist taught her to listen not just with her ears, but with her whole spirit. A true keeper does not chase the story, she had said. She invites it to come. And so Leora walked. She wandered the grove barefoot, her lantern humming gently at her side. One morning, it flickered in an unfamiliar rhythm. She paused beneath a sycamore tree with bark like aged parchment. The wind shifted. Flicker, flicker. Pause. Flicker. A pattern. A call. She followed. The lantern led her off the path, through dense ivy and a small ravine. It glowed brighter as she neared a hollow in the earth. There, half buried in moss, was a door. Not one made by forest creatures or fallen trees. This was a crafted door, smooth stone, shaped with care. A symbol marked its center, an open book wrapped in vines. Leora knelt, brushing away leaves. The door pulsed faintly with her lantern's light. This place is sleeping, she whispered. Mirren, who had arrived silently, sat beside her. It's a sealed memory. Can I open it? You can ask it to open, he said. Leora placed her lantern in the center of the door. She closed her eyes, letting her breath match the soft rhythm of the light. If you are story, I will hear you. If you are silence, I will carry you. If you are pain, I will hold you. There was a pause. Then, the stone warmed beneath her hand. A low hum began, soft as a lullaby. The door melted away into mist. Behind it lay a spiral staircase, curving downward into the roots of the grove. With her lantern leading the way, Leora descended. The air here was cool and damp, but not unpleasant. The walls shimmered faintly, carved with ancient words and languages she didn't know. The spiral ended in a chamber of stillness, a perfect circle lined with stone shelves. At the center, a table made of moonstone. Upon it, a single object, a journal wrapped in vine-threaded leather. Leora approached. She opened it. Blank. Every page. Yet her lantern pulsed with growing light. She turned to the first page, and words began to write themselves. To the keeper who finds this, I was once like you. My name is Kaelen. I held the lantern and listened to the whispers. But I heard one story I could not bear. Leora's breath caught. The writing continued. A story so filled with sorrow, I sealed it away, buried it beneath the grove. But now, perhaps you are stronger, braver. Perhaps the grove believes you can do what I could not. Remember. The words stopped. But her lantern burned fiercely now, casting long shadows. Mirren stepped into the chamber. Do you wish to see what Kaelen could not? Leora hesitated. Her heart beat loudly. But she nodded. Yes. Mirren nodded solemnly. Then take the journal and read it aloud by the pool of echoes. It must be shared to be freed. She cradled the book in her arms and climbed back to the surface, the spiral behind her dissolving into root and stone. That evening, beneath a twilight sky, she stood once more beside the pool of echoes. She opened the journal and read. It was the story of a boy named Dallin, born in the grove when it was still young. A boy with laughter that healed sadness, and dreams that could lift the trees. But Dallin had fallen ill, touched by a shadow from beyond the grove. No one could help him, except the grove itself. It offered to hold his soul, to keep it safe until someone could bring him back, not to life, but to memory. For without memory, even love is forgotten. But the keeper at the time, Kaelen, couldn't bear to speak of Dallin. The pain was too much. So he sealed the story and vanished. Tears slipped down Leora's cheeks as she read the final words. If you remember him, he will not be gone. She closed the book and placed it in the water. The pool of echoes rippled, then began to glow. A shape rose from its depths, a boy, laughing, eyes wide with wonder. Not alive, but present. The forest sighed. Dallin's memory drifted into the trees, into the wind, into the soil. And for the first time in 100 years, the grove sang a song of remembrance. Mirren whispered, You did what he could not. Leora stood, her lantern burning soft and steady. No story should be buried, she said. Not even the sad ones. The days after Dallin's remembrance passed quietly. The grove was at peace. Trees bloomed more vividly, the air grew sweeter, and laughter returned to places that had long been hushed. But in the stillness, Leora felt something shift. Her lantern had begun to flicker, not in warning, but with yearning. "Why does it do that?" she asked Mirren one evening as they sat by the silver stream. "Because the grove is not the only place that forgets," he replied, gazing toward the horizon. "There are stories buried far beyond these trees." Leora looked up past the forest, where the sky deepened into twilight and unfamiliar hills rose in the distance. "I've never gone beyond." "Most keepers don't," said Thalia, who had appeared behind them. "But your vow was different. You chose remembrance, not just for this place, but for all the forgotten." Mirren added gently, "It's time, Leora." She stood in silence, the weight of her lantern suddenly greater in her hand, not heavier, but fuller, as if the stories it had gathered were ready to travel again. That night, the entire grove gathered. Creatures of bark and moonlight, beings made of stardust and shadow, foxes and fireflies, all came to bid farewell. Not in sadness, but with a kind of reverence. Thalia handed Leora a cloak woven from wind-blown leaves and words never spoken. "May this carry you safely? It is stitched from memory itself." Leora bowed, her heart both tender and brave. As the first rays of dawn touched the treetops, she stepped beyond the border of the grove. The trees parted silently behind her, and the path before her twisted into mist. Outside the grove, the world was quieter. She followed her lantern's flicker through fields once farmed, now overgrown. Past rivers that remembered the touch of children's laughter but had long since run dry. The land itself seemed to sigh at her presence. In one village she found empty homes, worn by wind and silence. But in the center square stood a statue, eroded, forgotten, of a woman with a book and a light in her hand. Leora approached, heart quickening. At the base, barely legible, she read, "For the keeper who once reminded us who we were." "Mirren," she whispered. "There was another keeper?" He nodded. "Long ago. She came from the grove when this village began. She helped them build, taught them to share stories. But when she passed, no one remembered her name." Leora placed her lantern at the foot of the statue. "If I speak her story," she said, "will it return?" "If you believe it can," said Mirren. And so Leora sat. She opened her journal and began to write, not from memory, but from listening. The breeze carried voices. The stones whispered echoes. She pieced together fragments. The kindness in the keeper's voice, her patience, how she taught even the shyest child to speak aloud. As she wrote, her lantern grew warm. The statue glowed faintly. Flowers bloomed at its base. Doors in the village creaked open. People came, descendants of the long forgotten. They read her words. They sat with her. And slowly they remembered, not everything, but enough to begin again. They named the statue Aira. "She was my great-great-grandmother," an old woman said, tears in her eyes. "No one believed me." Leora smiled. Now they will. And so, she moved from place to place. She walked forgotten trails and abandoned hamlets. She listened to silence until it spoke. And with every name restored, every memory brought back into the light, her lantern burned brighter. But not all stories wanted to be found. One day, in the shadow of the hollow mountains, she found a gate sealed with rust and silence. No voice called from behind it, no whisper reached her ears. Yet her lantern trembled. "What is this place?" she asked. Mirren's fur bristled. "A story buried deep, one that even the grove feared." Leora stood still, feeling the silence like a stone in her chest. "I must try," she said. "You may not return the same." She looked at him, eyes calm but firm. "Then I'll return truer." With trembling hands, she touched the gate. It opened, not with force, but surrender. Beyond it, a dark forest stretched, untouched by wind, by birdsong, by light. And at its heart, something waited. Something forgotten not by time, but by choice. The trees of the forgotten forest were not like those of the grove. They stood frozen, their branches reaching not upward, but inward, curling like grasping fingers. No birds sang here. No animals stirred. The very air hung heavy with silence so deep it pressed on Leora's chest like stone. And yet, her lantern glowed. Not bright, but steady, like a heartbeat in a dream. Mirren walked beside her, unusually quiet. His ears flicked at every movement, though nothing moved. Not even the wind dared speak. "Do you know what sleeps here?" Leora asked softly. "No one knows," Mirren said. "Only that whatever it is not dead. Merely forgotten." They walked deeper. And then they heard it. A whisper. Not gentle like those of the grove. This one was jagged, like broken glass sliding across ice. Why did you leave me?" Leora stopped. The trees around them had twisted even tighter. Shadows pulsed between the trunks. Her lantern dimmed, then flickered. "We're close," she said. They stepped into a clearing where the sky was no longer visible. Overhead, vines wove a canopy so thick it blocked the light. In the center of the clearing stood a stone altar, cracked and moss-covered. Upon it, a single name was carved. Aira. Leora felt it immediately. A name that should have never been forgotten. She stepped closer, her lantern humming in alarm now, not fear, but warning. "Mirren," she began. But he was gone. The forest had taken him. "You remember me," the voice said again, closer now. "Then why did you leave me?" And from the shadows, a figure emerged. A girl, no older than Leora, dressed in robes faded beyond color. Her hair floated around her like strands of smoke. And her eyes, they were empty. Not blind, just gone. "I'm Leora," she said gently. "I didn't leave you." The girl tilted her head. "No, but you carry their light." She pointed to the lantern, which now burned silver blue. "You are a keeper." Leora nodded. "Aira," she said softly. "That's your name." The girl flinched, as if struck. Don't say it, she hissed. They made me forget. They told me it was better that way, that the grove must remain pure. Leora took a step closer. What happened to you? I remember too much, Enna said, voice cracking. I listened to the dark ones, the stories full of sorrow and rage. I brought them back, and the others feared me, so they sealed me here. Told no one, not even the forest. Tears filled Leora's eyes. They erased you. Enner's form flickered. I don't want to be a shadow, she whispered. Leora reached into her satchel and pulled out her journal. Then let me write you back. The air went still. You would do that? I must, Leora said. No story deserves to be buried alive. She sat at the base of the altar, and with trembling hands she wrote. She wrote Enner's name, her joy, her strength, her mistake, her punishment. She wrote it all, and as she did, the trees around them began to straighten. The vines uncurled. The wind returned. And Enner, now fully formed, fully seen, took a breath that echoed like thunder. I remember, she said. And so do we, said a voice behind them. Thalia stood at the edge of the clearing, Mirren at her side. Behind them, other keepers. One by one, they stepped forward and bowed to Enner. We forgot, Thalia said, but we will forget no more. Enner turned to Leora, eyes now full of light. You freed me. No, Leora said. I heard you. You freed yourself. Her lantern blazed once more, brighter than ever, and this time it sang. The forgotten forest bloomed, and the whispering grove echoed with the name of the girl it once erased. The return to the grove was quiet. Enner walked beside Leora now, her form growing more solid with each passing day, her voice stronger. She did not speak often, but when she did, the trees leaned in to listen. The keepers welcomed her, though many carried the weight of shame in their eyes. And yet Enner smiled softly, saying only, I am remembered now. That is enough. But for Leora, the lantern's flame had changed. It no longer burned for sorrow alone. It now pulsed with something else, uncertainty. One night, as moonlight spilled like silver wine through the trees, Leora stood on the edge of the grove. The wind whispered uneasily, tugging at her cloak. Something's wrong, she murmured. Mirren emerged from the underbrush, ears perked. You feel it too, she nodded. The lantern's glow, it's fractured. There's a memory nearby, but it's twisted. Not forgotten, not silenced. Something else. Together they followed the flickering rhythm, past glowing moss and crystal brooks, until the grove began to fade into dry hills and fractured roots. They came upon a village, small, worn by time, but alive. Lanterns hung from windows. Laughter echoed. But something felt off. The people greeted Leora kindly. They knew of the keepers. One elder approached her, his eyes wide with reverence. You carry the lantern, he said. Then perhaps you can confirm what we all remember. Leora frowned. What do you mean? He led her to the village square, where a statue stood. It was worn, but still proud. A tall man with a sword raised, one hand holding a child. "This," the elder said, "is our savior, Arian. He drove out the shadow beasts that once lived in the hills, saved us all. We remember him every year with a feast. Songs, stories." Leora looked at the statue, and her lantern dimmed. Not in silence, in resistance. Mirren growled low, "Something's wrong." That night, Leora stayed in the village. The people were warm, welcoming. They told her stories of Arian, how he had defeated the Darklings, how he built the village, how his heart had been pure. But her lantern never warmed. It remained cold. The next morning, she wandered the hills. At their base, half buried in dust and thorns, she found a door carved into stone. No key. Just silence. She placed the lantern before it. It flickered, and the door opened. Inside, she found not relics of a hero, but bones. Hundreds. Small. Fragile. Children. A memory lived here, but not one the village wanted. She sat, heart thudding. "They remember what comforts them," Mirren said quietly. "But it's not true. Not entirely." She opened her journal, and the story poured forth. It told of a man named Arian, once a keeper himself. But in his travels, he had encountered a story of such grief, such unbearable pain, that instead of remembering it, he had blamed it. He called the shadow beings monsters, though they had only mourned. And the village believed him. Together, they had destroyed the mourners, buried their memory, replaced it with heroism. Leora cried as she wrote, her tears falling on the pages like ink. That night, she stood before the village, and she read. They listened, at first in silence, then in resistance. "You lie," one man said. "That's not what happened," said another. But an old woman, silent until then, stepped forward. "I was a girl when it happened," she said, "and I remember. The shadows, they wept. They never attacked us. They only wanted to be heard." The crowd stilled. The statue of Arian cracked. Not from anger, from truth. Leora placed the journal at its base. "I do not ask you to forget what you cherished," she said, "but remember fully. Remember truthfully." The village did not speak. But the next morning, children gathered around her. "Will you tell us what they sang?" one asked. Leora smiled. "Yes," she said, "and you will write it down." Her lantern blazed with a new light, one of clarity. That night, under stars that now felt closer, she wrote a single sentence in her journal. Even false memories long to be real, but only truth can set them free. Leora returned to the Whispering Grove in silence. The trees greeted her with slow, rustling boughs, and the lantern at her side glowed like a living star. The journey had changed her. She had carried sorrow, unearthed lies, and sown truth into the world again. But the grove was not at peace. Something was wrong. As she stepped into the central glade, where the great tree of memory stood, she found the keepers gathered. Their faces were solemn, eyes fixed on a rift, an open wound in the air itself, spinning gently at the roots of the great tree. "What is it?" she asked. Thalia turned to her. "It is what happens when too many truths collide without reconciliation." The rift pulsed. Within it, echoes swirled, laughter, screams, lullabies, weeping, all overlapping, all true, but none complete. "The grove is unstable," said Thalia. "Your journey stirred memories long buried, memories we ignored. Some were misremembered, some twisted, some left unfinished." Mirren sat beside Leora, ears back. "You've brought light," he said, "but you've also pulled shadows from beneath the roots." Leora approached the rift. The lantern trembled, not in fear, but in anticipation. Within the spiral of echoes, she saw herself, but older, wiser, standing at a crossroads. "This is my doing," she said. "No," Thalia corrected gently. "This is your task." Leora understood. To mend the rift, she had to choose. Not what to forget, but how to carry what could not be healed. She stepped closer. The rift's light spun faster. The voices grew louder. "You can seal it," Thalia said. "Lock away the chaos. Let peace return." "Or," Mirren said, "you can open it wider. Let the grove remember everything. Even what hurts. Even what shames." Leora's heart thundered. Sealing it would bring calm. Opening it would bring truth. She looked to the lantern. It pulsed 3 times, just as it had the night her journey began. She stepped forward and opened it. The rift exploded into light. Memories burst from the sky like fireflies. A keeper who betrayed her vow out of love. A creature who saved a child but was cursed for its shape. A grove that once tried to erase grief to stay pure. A keeper named Kaelen, who still wandered the edges of dreams, looking for forgiveness. The grove shook, but did not fall. Instead, it breathed. For the first time in centuries, the grove accepted all of itself. The great tree's bark split open, not in damage, but in invitation. Within its core, a new chamber bloomed, a hall of unspoken stories, and at its center, a pedestal. Leora placed her lantern upon it. Its light spread through the roots of the grove, into the rivers, into the stars, into the memories of every living being connected to it. Thalia placed a hand on Leora's shoulder. "You've changed the grove." "No," said Leora, tears on her cheeks. "I've let it be true." From that day forward, every keeper who took a vow in the Whispering Grove first passed through the Hall of Unspoken Stories. And every lantern burned not only with light, but with courage. The grove was whole again. Its trees no whispered in fear, but sang openly in truth. The Hall of Unspoken Stories had become a sacred place, and Leora's name was now spoken in awe, though she never sought it. But she knew her time there was ending. The lantern, once warm and steady, now pulsed with a gentle urging. It called not toward memory, but creation. Thalia met her on the bridge of vines beneath a canopy of gold leaf stars. "You've restored the grove," she said, "but your path has outgrown it." Leora smiled softly. "I feel it. The stories no longer just ask to be remembered. They want to be born." Mirren padded beside her, tail brushing her cloak. "The world beyond still forgets. But more than that, it doesn't yet know what it's missing." So Leora gathered her things. She left behind her journal, now filled with 9 journeys. And in its place she took a blank one. No title. No ink. Just pages waiting. The grove gave her its final gift, a seed of memory wrapped in silk and light. "Plant it," said Thalia, "where silence still reigns." So she walked, through valleys that feared their own shadows, through cities where no one dreamed. And one day she found it. A place no one remembered because no one had ever been. It was nothing but a field. No name. No past. She knelt and pressed the seed into the soil. Her lantern dimmed, then pulsed once, twice, and bloomed. From the earth rose a tree, not ancient, but newborn and eager. Its branches reached upward like open arms. At its roots grew benches, quiet pools, and empty bookshelves. And in the center, a table. Leora placed a blank journal upon it. People came. First curious wanderers, then seekers, then storytellers. They read, they wrote. They whispered things they had never dared say aloud. They called it the Glade of First Stories. Not a place to remember the past, but to begin the future. And Leora? She never claimed a title again. But she sat beneath the tree with her lantern always beside her, listening to stories that had not yet learned to speak. She was no longer just a keeper. She was a kindler. And every night, as stars flickered above the glade, a new story began. Some were sad. Some were wild. Some were true. But all were welcome. Because now, no story ever had to be forgotten again. The lantern's golden flame flickered low as Aira stepped deeper into the heart of the grove. The ancient trees loomed above her, their bark etched with glowing runes that pulsed like slow heartbeats. She could feel it now, the memory of the forest itself leaning in, listening. In her hand, the lantern of Leora hummed with warmth. It had shown her visions, the old guardians, the pact of the grove, and the betrayal that splintered the harmony long ago. The light wasn't just illumination, it was memory, truth, and legacy. As she passed through an archway of tangled roots, she came upon a clearing where time seemed to pause. At its center stood a stone altar, cracked but resolute, encircled by blossoms that glowed pale blue. Aira knelt beside it, lantern raised. The flame grew taller, brighter, and then it sang. Not a sound she could hear, but one she could feel, a deep, resonant hum in her bones. The grove responded in kind. Leaves trembled. Moss shivered. The altar parted at its core, revealing a coiled root that pulsed with silver sap. Then the voice returned, soft and wind-like. "You carry her light, but do you carry her will?" Aira swallowed. I do. I want to make it right. The ground beneath her shifted. The root began to unfurl, revealing a seed no larger than her palm, cradled in amber light. Then plant what was once torn out. Let harmony be reborn, not by fire, but by song. Aira took the seed. The lantern's flame dipped and vanished, its purpose fulfilled. She pressed the seed into the soft earth, and the grove exhaled. Above, the stars broke through the branches, and somewhere far off, a bird sang a forgotten melody. The grove remembered. The moment the seed touched the earth, a ripple spread outward, silent but powerful. Trees bowed. Flowers turned their faces skyward. A pulse of green light spiraled up from the soil, twining around Aira like a gentle vine. She stepped back, eyes wide. Where the seed had been planted, a sprout now grew at impossible speed. Within seconds it was a sapling, its bark silver-streaked, its leaves glowing like emerald fire. And at its heart, a flame burst forth, not orange like the lanterns, but pure green, vibrant and alive. The grove breathed again. And then came the voices. Not one, but many, whispers layered upon whispers. The ancestors of the forest, the guardians who had fallen, the harmony once lost. Their words bloomed in her mind. The pact is rekindled, but balance must still be guarded. Suddenly, the green flame lifted from the tree's core and hovered before her. It hovered, then dove into her chest. Aira gasped. The warmth spread through her veins like roots through soil. She staggered, but did not fall. Her hands now pulsed with light. Her breath came in harmony with the grove's. And somewhere deep inside she knew. She was no longer just a visitor. She was now a warden of the Whispering Grove. The trees rustled with approval. A stag of light emerged from the shadows, antlers like branches, eyes like stars. It bowed before her, then turned, gesturing with its head. A path had opened, a glowing trail winding through the darkest part of the forest. The grove was calling her onward. There was one last secret yet to be found. The stag of light moved with regal grace, hooves leaving no mark, only faint echoes in the moss. Aira followed, her hands still tingling with the presence of the green flame, now embedded within her very being. Around her, the grove had changed. It was no longer just trees and roots. It was alive in a way she had never fully sensed before. Leaves whispered names. Stones remembered footsteps. Even the breeze carried fragments of forgotten lullabies. The glowing path wound deeper into the forest, away from where even the bravest spirits once wandered. Here, the trees grew taller and closer, their canopies nearly blotting out the sky. The light dimmed, not from absence of sun, but from presence of memory, dense, ancient, and heavy. She could feel them all now, the broken oaths, the buried fears, the echoes of a long-forgotten betrayal that still poisoned the roots of the grove. The stag stopped at the edge of a steep descent. Below lay a hollow chasm, so wide it swallowed sound, so dark it seemed to drink in the light of her presence. This was the place spoken of in fragments only, the groves wound. Aira looked to the stag, but it had vanished, leaving her alone with the chasm and the silence. She took a breath, then stepped forward. With each footfall, the green flame within her grew brighter, pushing back the darkness. But it was not a silent darkness. It hissed and whispered, probing her thoughts. You do not belong. You are only one girl. Even the first warden failed. Aira's steps slowed. Doubt slithered up her spine. Her mind filled with visions, images not her own. She saw a girl like herself, long ago, kneeling in this very place. The first warden. She held the same lantern, the same seed, but something had gone terribly wrong. A fracture. A voice. A choice. The light had dimmed. The forest had wept. And the wound had never healed. Aira reached the heart of the hollow, where a stone dais rose from the earth like a buried heart. Upon it lay a twisted relic, a blackened shard of a lantern, its flame long dead, its handle cracked by time and grief. Around it, vines coiled protectively, pulsing like veins. She approached, and the whispers grew louder. Leave it! It is cursed. It remembers failure. But Aira did not retreat. She knelt, placing her hand over the shard. It was cold, colder than death. But the green flame within her responded, reaching out, wrapping around the broken relic with gentle warmth. Suddenly, she saw everything. The first warden, Leora, had been betrayed, not by an enemy, but by doubt. Her own heart, broken by loss, had weakened the bond. And in that moment of sorrow, a darkness from beyond the grove had crept in and taken root. It had whispered, deceived, and severed the balance. Aira wept, not out of fear, but mourning. I'm sorry, she whispered to the shard. You were never alone. You just believed you were. The green flames surged. Vines recoiled. And the shard began to glow, not with its own light, but with the shared legacy of all who had come before. Suddenly, the hollow shook. From the depths, a shape emerged, massive, shifting, ancient. A creature born of sorrow and shadow, the hollow beast. It had no eyes, only a mouth full of broken promises and a body stitched from withered bark and bone. It roared, a sound that shattered leaves and turned breath into frost. This was the grove's final guardian and final curse. Aira stood tall, light blazing in her chest, hands open, not to fight, but to face. I see you, she said. I know what you are. You are not the enemy. You are the wound. The hollow beast paused, its body trembling. The green flame flared, spiraling into a radiant aura around her. And then she stepped forward and did the unthinkable. She embraced it. For a moment, there was only silence. Then light. A blinding, brilliant burst of green and silver. The beast dissolved, not destroyed, but released. And as its last breath left the world, the blackened shard in Aira's hand reformed, fusing with the light of her heart into a new lantern, neither old nor new, but reborn. The grove exhaled. Roots sang. Branches swayed. And from the chasm, flowers bloomed for the first time in an age. Aira rose, lantern in hand. She was no longer the girl who had entered this forest. She was its keeper. But far in the distance, beyond the trees, a storm was rising. The grove had healed, but the world beyond had not. The wind shifted. Where moments ago the grove had been wrapped in stillness and renewal, now the air held tension. The trees whispered again, but not with memory or song. This time, their leaves trembled with warning. Aira stood at the edge of the chasm, lantern pulsing softly at her side. The hollow beast was gone, released into peace, and the forest's wound had finally begun to close. Yet the green flame within her was no longer calm. It stirred and flickered, sensing what she too could now feel. Something approaching. And it did not come in peace. She followed the glowing path back through the grove. As she walked, the forest parted for her like old friends stepping aside. Creatures peered from their hollows, eyes wide, ears twitching. Even the great silver owls turned to watch her pass. By the time she reached the outer ring of the Whispering Grove, the sky had darkened to iron. Clouds churned like boiling ink. Wind tore through the trees, scattering petals and ash alike. Thunder cracked, not from above, but from the earth itself. At the grove's border stood the stag of light once more, its antlers flaring with radiant urgency. But beside it now was another figure, tall, cloaked in deep green, face shadowed by a hood. Aira paused, her lantern rising instinctively. The figure spoke first, voice low and echoing. "You've awakened it." Aira narrowed her eyes. "Awakened what?" The figure stepped forward. The wind shifted just enough for her to see a glimpse of their face, eyes like polished obsidian, glowing faintly from within. "The balance was never meant to be held by one flame alone," they said. "Where light grows stronger, so too must shadow." Aira's grip on the lantern tightened. The green flame flared, responding to her heartbeat. "I didn't choose this power. The grove gave it to me. I healed what was broken." The figure tilted their head. "Did you?" they asked. "Or did you simply make it visible again?" Behind them, the sky cracked open. Not with lightning, but with darkness. A rift, high in the clouds, tore across the heavens like an old scar reopening. Through it pulsed a different light, deep violet, flickering with shadow and malice. And from that rift descended a shape, winged, enormous, cloaked in smoke and fire. Aira staggered back. The trees groaned. The figure beside the stag looked up calmly. "It is called the Morning Star. It is the answer to what you've lit. Where there is rebirth, there must be reckoning." The stag reared and released a cry, not a roar, but a song, a call to arms. From every corner of the grove, lights began to appear, small flames like her own. Spirits, guardians, echoes of wardens long past, and among them a few living, children of the forest, healers, whisperers, the last defenders of the old world. Aira turned to the figure. "Are you with us? Or against us?" The figure's smile was neither kind nor cruel. "That choice was yours the moment you took the lantern. I am the balance. I am both." They vanished in a swirl of mist. Aira looked up at the morning star descending. Her heart thundered, not with fear, but purpose. She turned to the gathering defenders and raised her lantern high. Its green light pierced the rising darkness, spreading like veins across the treetops. "The forest stands," she said, voice steady. "And so do we." The grove answered with a unified rustle, a sound like breath drawn in before the storm. Because this time, the forest would not be silent. This time, the grove would fight. The sky was torn. Above the canopy of the whispering grove, the morning star hovered, vast and terrible. Its wings spanned the heavens, woven from storm cloud and memory, its many eyes glowing with violet fire. From its course spilled echoes of sorrow, the cries of 1,000 forgotten places. Aira stood at the grove's edge, lantern held high. Around her, the defenders gathered, spirits, creatures, whisperers, and ancient wardens returned in spectral form. The grove's heart pulsed in time with the green flame she carried. But they all knew this was not just a battle for the forest. It was a battle for remembrance. The morning star descended, claws of shadow reaching for the earth. Wherever they touched, rot spread. Flowers wilted. Stones cracked. Even the trees, strong and ancient, groaned beneath its presence. But Aira did not step back. She stepped forward. With each step, the lantern glowed brighter. The green flame had grown, fed not only by the grove, but by her courage, her sorrow, her choice. It was no longer just the light of the forest. It was her own. She turned to the defenders. "We fight not to destroy," she called, her voice steady, "but to remember, to protect, to restore." The grove trembled with approval, and then the sky fell. The morning star shrieked, a sound like metal tearing, and unleashed its fury. Bolts of violet fire rained down. The forest erupted in chaos. Spirit guardians raced to shield the young. Vines rose like walls. Trees twisted into shapes of defense. Aira sprinted forward, dodging blasts, reaching the ancient pillar at the grove's center, the place where all light converged. The lantern in her hand grew heavy, burning with energy it could no longer contain. She reached the summit of the pillar just as the morning star dove toward her. Its eyes locked onto her. No rage, only hunger. It sought the flame. Aira raised the lantern high. And in that moment, the memory of Leora, the first warden, stood beside her, glowing with silver light. She looked at Aira and placed a hand over hers. "You carry what I could not. But this time, you are not alone." Aira understood. She poured everything into the lantern, her grief, her hope, her love for the grove and all who lived within it. The green flame burst upward, unfurling like a great tree of light. Branches of memory reached the sky. Roots of truth struck the earth. The morning star collided with the light, but it did not consume it. It was absorbed. The violet flame shrieked, flickered, and turned green. Darkness unraveled. The storm cracked open, and from within, stars returned. Real ones, quiet ones. The sky mended itself like old bark healing over a scar. The morning star was no more. Not destroyed. Not defeated. But healed. Aira collapsed to her knees, breathless. The lantern in her hand dimmed. Its work was done. Around her, the forest sighed. Flowers bloomed where fire had fallen. Spirits bowed and dissolved, their duty fulfilled. The stag of light stepped forward one last time and touched its forehead to hers. "You are the last light of Leora," it said, "and the first flame of what comes next." And then it too faded. The whispering grove stood quiet, but not empty. Aira remained, its warden, its keeper, its voice. And though the lantern no longer burned in her hand, it burned within her, and would, for as long as the forest breathed. She looked to the horizon, where dawn had begun to rise. Not all stories end in silence. Some end in song. The end. The grove was quiet. Not the silence of fear or sorrow, but the deep, gentle hush that falls when something ancient has fulfilled its purpose. The wind no longer rustled with urgent whispers. The trees stood still, their leaves glowing with a soft silver light, as if exhaling after a long, long breath. In the center of the clearing, where the moonflower once bloomed, Leora stood, surrounded by the circle of stones. Her hands, once trembling with uncertainty, now held the final ember, a golden speck of light, no larger than a tear, yet radiant with everything the forest had ever been. She turned slowly, gazing at each of the forest spirits who had gathered: Thistle the squirrel, Ashen the owl, Marin the fox, and the oldest among them, Elder Root, whose bark bore the scars of many seasons. Each of them bowed their heads, not in farewell, but in reverence. "You've carried the light well," Elder Root said, his voice like wine through hollow wood. "Now it is time." Leora nodded. There was no fear in her eyes, only a soft sadness wrapped in peace. She stepped to the heart of the grove, where the roots of all trees intertwined beneath the soil, where the first whisper had begun. The light in her palm pulsed once, twice, and then slowly rose into the air. It hovered above her, trembling, and then, with the faintest chime, like glass kissed by starlight, it burst. Not with fire, not with sound, but with memory. Memories poured from the light, drifting like golden snow, of the first bloom in spring, the laughter of fox kits beneath the ferns, the songs sung by streams under moonlight, and the heartbeat of the earth, strong and eternal. The spirits watched in silence as the memories sank gently into the roots, the soil, the stones, becoming part of the grove forever. And Leora, she faded with the light, not vanished, not gone, but woven into the forest, into its breath and its stillness. The moss beneath one's feet, the glow of fireflies at dusk, the hush of snowfall. She had become its final whisper. Seasons passed, then years. Children of the nearby villages would grow up hearing the tale of the girl with the light in her hands. Some would venture into the woods and feel her presence in the hush between bird calls. Some would see her reflection in the still pond at dawn. Some would dream of her and awaken with peace in their hearts. The whispering grove remained, not unchanged, but everlasting. Its light no longer needed to shine in flames or stars. It lived in every story whispered beside a fire, in every gentle hand that planted a seed, in every heart that listened to the world, not with ears, but with wonder. And above it all, when the moon was right and the wind was slow, a soft voice could be heard, like the rustle of leaves. You are never alone, and the light is always within you. A century had passed since Leora became light. The world outside the grove had changed. Machines hummed in distant cities. The stars were named and mapped, and few remembered the forest's old magic. Yet the grove remained, untouched, unbent. Children still came, though fewer than before. Most were brought by stories, carried like lullabies from grandmothers who spoke in soft, secret voices. But one child came alone. Her name was Aira. She was 10 years old, with dark eyes that saw more than they should, and a quiet heart that longed for something she couldn't name. She didn't believe in magic, not really, but she believed in silence. And something about the grove felt kind. Aira wandered through the trees. The light was dim, but not heavy. Birds watched her from their branches, and wind moved in slow spirals around her ankles, like a cat welcoming her home. And then she saw it, a single petal, silver, glowing faintly, floating in the air just above a patch of moss. Aira reached out, not with her hand, but with her breath. She whispered, not a word, not even a thought, just feeling. The petal stirred, and somewhere deep in the grove, an ancient tree opened its eye. The voice that rose wasn't loud. It came not from the sky or from the ground, but from within her chest, like remembering something she never knew she forgot. Welcome, child of light. Aira stood still. You are not the first, nor will you be the last. The whisper lives because you listen. And in that moment, she understood. Not everything had to be believed to be real. Some magic simply waited for the right hands, the right heart, the right whisper. In the village, they said the grove had gone silent. But on clear nights, if you wandered far enough and kept very, very still, you might see a girl with dark eyes and a lantern of silver light, walking barefoot through the trees. And you might hear her speak, not to the forest, but with it, because the light of Leora had never left. It had simply waited for someone new, a new beginning. The wind had changed. It still whispered through the trees, but its tone had deepened, not in anger, but in warning. Aira felt it in her sleep, in the way leaves no longer danced but leaned, listening. Even the birds had grown quieter. Something was waking. Not evil, but old. Too old to remember names, but not too old to remember promises. One morning, Aira awoke before dawn. The silver petals she had found months ago now hovered gently above her lantern, pulsing slowly, like a heartbeat. It was brighter than before, and warmer. She followed it, through the grove, past the old clearing, beyond the circle of standing stones where Leora once gave herself to the light, to a part of the forest even the spirits didn't name. The trees here grew in spirals, their bark etched with runes that no book had ever recorded. And beneath one of them, a twisted, ancient elder tree, the moss was breathing. literally, in and out, slow and deep, like the forest itself was asleep beneath the earth. Aira knelt beside it. She placed her palm on the moss, and the world shifted, not around her, within her. She saw flashes, a grove bathed in golden fire, a child with silver eyes, holding back a storm with nothing but her voice. A stone breaking open to reveal something that breathed light and shadow, and a name whispered not in words but in roots. Velashar, the sleeper beneath. The vision vanished. Aira gasped. Her lantern dimmed. The petal turned cold, and all around her the forest fell utterly silent. That night she returned home, silent and pale. She didn't tell the villagers. They wouldn't understand. But she told the grove, and the grove listened, because it remembered. The next morning, the sky was restless. Clouds swirled in slow spirals, not gray or white, but tinged with pale green, like leaves pressed too long between the pages of a forgotten book. Aira stood at the edge of the grove. Her lantern, once softly glowing, now flickered, as if unsure of its own light. The silver petal inside spun slowly in the air, pulsing with a rhythm that was not hers. "The root caller has awakened," she whispered, "and it's calling me." She took a breath and stepped deeper into the forest. The trees grew denser, the light dimmer. The sounds of the village were long gone. Even the grove's usual whispers had quieted, as if holding their breath. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet pulsed. Not a tremor, a heartbeat. Then a voice. Not loud, not kind, but old. "To walk deeper, you must know the name of soil. To touch truth, you must offer your root. Speak, or turn back." Aira looked down. The moss had parted to reveal a patch of dark, living soil, pulsing slowly. She knelt and placed her palm on it, and whispered, "Leora." The earth stilled. Then came the answer. Not the seed, the name of the root. "Try again." She closed her eyes. She thought of everything she had felt since entering the grove. The breath of trees, the memory of water, the ache of stone, the hush of endings. Then she felt something deeper, the silence beneath silence, and she spoke a word she had never heard before. Illurim. The soil shimmered, and then split open like the petals of a sleeping flower. A vine, wrapped in moss and light, reached up and coiled around her wrist. It didn't burn. It didn't bind. It listened. And then, from the shadows between the roots, a figure emerged. Small, round, with bark-like skin, mushroom cap ears, and glowing amber eyes. A forest spirit, but unlike any from the old tales. "You spoke the hidden root," it said, bowing deeply. "You are the child who listens. I am Nib, sprout of the deep grove, guardian of trial and trust." Aira stared. "Trial?" Nib nodded. "The root caller has stirred. You must walk 3 paths. Earth, breath, and shadow. Each will ask more than you know. Each will change you. Aira's lantern pulsed once. And if I fail? She asked. Nib tilted his head. Then the sleeper wakes alone. Aira stepped cautiously beyond the root's embrace, feeling the vine's soft pulse around her wrist. The grove grew thicker here, the trees arching overhead to form a vaulted ceiling of leaves shimmering faintly in twilight hues. Before her, a thick mist curled through the underbrush. It was not cold, but alive, a breath, a whisper, a slow exhale from the heart of the forest itself. This is the path of breath, Nib said, appearing at her side like a shadow woven from moss and bark. You must listen carefully. Every inhale, every sigh carries a secret. Lose your way, and the mist will steal your voice. Aira nodded, clutching her lantern as the silver petal hovered nearer, glowing softly. She stepped forward. The fog curled around her ankles, wrapping her in a quiet hush. Her breath came slow and steady, echoing inside the silence. Shapes formed in the mist, faint, fleeting faces made of smoke and light. Whispered voices, half-remembered dreams. Who's there? Aira whispered. A soft voice answered, almost a sigh. We are the dreams forgotten, the songs unsung. We live between worlds, where breath meets shadow. Aira felt a chill, not of fear, but of wonder. Suddenly, from the fog, a figure emerged. Tall and graceful, with eyes like liquid stars and hair that shimmered like the dawn. I am Sofa, keeper of breath and forgotten song, the spirit said. To pass, you must offer a breath, your true breath, unmasked and unbound. Aira hesitated. She inhaled deeply, feeling the cool mist fill her lungs. Then she exhaled, slowly, steadily, a breath that carried her hopes, her fears, her memories of the grove, and her silent promise to protect it. The mist shimmered and parted, revealing a path lined with glowing flowers that pulsed gently like hearts. Sofa smiled. You have passed the breath's trial, but more awaits. The shadow waits to awaken. Nib's vine tightened briefly, then loosened. Aira stepped forward, feeling lighter, but aware that the greatest challenge still lay ahead. Far beneath the roots, the sleeper stirred once more, a slow breath from ancient earth. The grove was alive, and its new guardian was awakening. The path behind her faded as Aira stepped through the veil of breath light. The air grew colder, heavier, not in weight, but in silence. Even Nib had fallen quiet. Ahead, the trees grew stranger, their trunks twisted in impossible shapes, their leaves black as ink and motionless, even as the wind stirred. This is where light forgets, Nib whispered, appearing beside her once more. The third path, the shadows whisper. Aira swallowed hard. Her lantern pulsed faintly, the silver petal inside dimming, as if uncertain. You must face not what follows you, Nib said, but what you have left behind. They reached a wide hollow, where no plants grew. In its center stood a cracked obsidian mirror, ringed with smooth, pale stones. Above it, nothing, no sky, no canopy. Just void. Aira approached. The mirror shimmered, and slowly, a reflection formed, not of her body, but of her fears. She saw herself, alone, abandoned, powerless. She saw the moment her parents left and never returned. She saw herself standing at the edge of the village, pretending not to cry when the other children laughed at her dreams of the grove. And then she saw Leora, not glowing, not divine, but simply tired, holding the lantern, kneeling in the clearing, whispering, "Let the light find the next." Aira's knees weakened. She wanted to look away, but didn't. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. The mirror whispered, "Because light casts shadow. Because strength is not born from perfection, but from what we choose to carry." Then the ground beneath the mirror cracked open. From the darkness rose a shape, a massive silhouette formed of shifting shadow, not evil, not cruel, but ancient. It had no eyes, but it saw her. It had no mouth, but it spoke. "You bear the lantern, child of Grove. But will you carry the weight of what comes next?" Aira lifted her lantern, though her hand shook. "Yes," she said softly. "Even if I tremble, even if I don't understand, I will carry it." The shadow paused and bowed. Slowly, it dissolved into mist and re-entered the roots of the forest. The mirror cracked fully and crumbled into ash. Nib exhaled in awe. "You didn't banish it," he said. "You listened. You passed." Aira nodded, tears in her eyes, not from sorrow, but release. The lantern in her hand flared with new light, not silver now, but a soft, golden glow, like dawn after rain. "Come," Bib said gently. "The sleeper waits." Beneath the grove, far below the roots and bones of the world, something stirred, not as a threat, but as a guardian. Its eye opened slowly, and for the first time in centuries, it smiled. The forest was no longer just a forest. As Aira walked with Nib, the trees leaned inward like listening elders, their leaves trembling not from wind, but from reverence. The golden glow of her lantern now pulsed in harmony with the roots beneath her feet, a shared heartbeat between her and the grove. "Are we going underground?" she asked. Nib nodded, somber. "Yes. The sleeper lies where light has never walked, where the first seed was buried. It's not a place, it's a memory." They arrived at an ancient tree unlike any other. Its bark shimmered with runes older than language, and its hollow pulsed like a slow breath. Nib bowed. "Step inside. The grove will carry you." Aira placed her hand on the bark. It parted silently, and she stepped through. There was no descent, no stairs, no falling, just softness, like sinking through time. The world faded and then reformed, a vast cavern filled not with rock, but with living root veins, glowing faintly with amber light. At the center was a mound of braided roots, and upon it, curled in a sleeping spiral, lay something enormous, not monstrous, not threatening. It was shaped like a massive fox, but made of bark, stone, and golden moss. Antlers rose like twisted branches from its brow. One eye was shut. The other opened slowly, and looked at Aira. "You came," said the sleeper. Its voice echoed like thunder underwater, ancient, sorrowful, gentle. Aira stepped forward. Her lantern pulsed. "You've waited," she replied. The sleeper nodded. "Leora was the last voice I heard. She gave her flame to preserve the path. But only one who carries light, breath, and shadow can awaken me." "Why do you sleep?" she asked. The sleeper paused. "To hold the balance. Above, the forest breathes and grows. Below, I hold what must never rise, the rot beneath, the forgotten hunger of the first broken root." Aira felt a chill. "If you wake, it will stir. But not yet. I asked the grove for one more voice. A new guardian. Not to fight, but to remember." "Me," Aira said, her voice shaking. The sleeper bowed its head. "You are not chosen. You chose." And then it sighed. With that breath, a pulse ran through the roots, the trees, the wind above, and the grove remembered itself. The sleeper's body shimmered, and from its chest bloomed a final gift, a tiny seed, glowing white gold. Aira stepped forward and took it gently into her hands. "This," said the sleeper, "is not to plant but to carry. It holds memory, light, and rest. What do I do with it? Listen, learn, and when the time comes, grow a new grove." And with that, the sleeper closed its eye and returned to stillness. Nib touched her arm gently. "It is done, Aira. You are the grove bearer now." Aira stood in silence, holding the warm seed close to her chest. Far above, the first sunlight of spring touched the leaves of the grove, and the wind, for the first time in an age, sang. When Aira emerged from the hollow tree, the world felt quieter. Not empty, just listening. The golden seed pulsed faintly in her palm, warm as a living heartbeat. The lantern no longer hovered. It had gently faded, leaving behind only a single strand of light tied around her wrist, like a promise that would never unravel. Nib walked beside her in silence. The trees bent ever so slightly as she passed, not in fear or awe, but in gentle greeting. "You're different now," Nib finally said. "I feel different," Aira admitted. "But I don't feel ready." Nib tilted his head. "Readiness is a myth. Listening is truth." They reached the village edge as the sun began to fall. Aira paused, looking toward the familiar rooftops and the winding paths of the place she had once called home, though now it felt impossibly small, like a forgotten word at the edge of a long song. Children played near the well, unaware of the light she carried. Elders sat beneath the vine-wrapped gazebo, watching the shadows stretch toward evening. No one noticed her at first, until a small child, no older than 6, ran toward her, chasing a leaf in the wind. He stopped suddenly, staring at the glowing band around her wrist. "You're glowing," he whispered, wide-eyed. "Just a little," she smiled. He reached forward without fear and touched the light. Nothing happened, and yet everything did. His eyes widened. "It feels like spring. It's the grove," she whispered. "It remembers you." He grinned and darted away, shouting, "She's magic! She's made of trees!" Within moments, more children gathered. curious, laughing, asking questions she could barely answer. The adults followed, slower, more skeptical. Aira looked up and saw familiar faces. The healer who once doubted her, the teacher who warned her to grow out of stories, and the village warden who never looked her in the eye. Now they stood in silence, watching her with a kind of fear disguised as wonder. "I'm not here to change anything," she said softly. "Only to listen. To protect what listens back." The wind stirred. The trees behind her rustled, but not from wind. The grove had followed her, not just in spirit, but in seed, in root, in memory. "The world beyond this village has forgotten how to listen," she continued. "But we don't have to." No one spoke, but no one turned away. That night, Aira planted the glowing seed at the village's edge. Not to grow a tree. Not yet. She knelt in the earth and whispered, "Not for now. For tomorrow." The seed pulsed once, and slept. Later, beneath the stars, Nib curled up beside her on a bed of moss, his voice almost lost in the night breeze. "Do you think they'll believe you?" Aira looked up at the stars. "They don't need to. The grove does." And from deep beneath the roots, the sleeper dreamt peacefully, no longer alone. Herb to be continued in Part 6. The Grove Awakens Elsewhere Herb. Far beyond the village where Aira planted the seed, over hills and frozen rivers, through sleeping deserts and cities that never listened, a whisper stirred in the dark. It was not loud. It was not urgent. It was remembered. And in a small, wind-bitten town nestled between cliffs and clouds, a child awoke from a dream with tears in their eyes. Her name was Kaelen. She lived with her grandmother in a house that creaked like old trees and smelled of wild tea and rain-soaked wool. The village had long forgotten stories, traded them for clocks, wires, and quiet lives. People here did not dream of forests. They feared them. But Kaelen dreamed every night. And last night she had seen a lantern, held by a girl with wild hair and eyes full of stars. She had followed the girl into a grove that pulsed with music, not music made of notes, but of breath, shadow, and light. When she woke, her pillow was damp with tears. "I heard them whispering," she told her grandmother. "In the roots. In the wind." Her grandmother only smiled and touched her cheek. "Then you are waking up." Kaelen blinked. "But I'm already awake." "Not like that, dear," her grandmother whispered. "You've begun to listen. That's rarer than waking." That afternoon, Kaelen wandered outside the village's edge. The sky was gray and low, the cliffs sharp and silent. But there, between two ancient stones half buried in snow, she found something glowing. A petal. Not a flower. Not a spark. A single silver petal, soft and humming. It floated toward her. Kaelen reached out, and the world breathed. In that moment, Aira gasped. Miles away, standing by her garden, her hand flew to her wrist. The light band shimmered briefly, then faded again. "Nib?" she whispered. "Did you feel that?" The little vine creature emerged from the soil, his mossy fur bristling. "Yes." A light far away. like yours, but new and ancient. Aira's eyes widened. The grove is spreading again. No, Nib corrected gently. It's remembering. That night, Kaelen returned to her dreams. This time, the grove was closer. This time, the lantern waited for her. Kaelen sat by the fire, the silver petal resting in her palm. It no longer glowed, but it hummed faintly, a sound you couldn't hear, only feel in your ribs, like a heartbeat echoing through stone. You shouldn't have brought it inside, her grandmother said gently, wrapping another layer of wool around Kaelen's shoulders. It followed me, Kaelen whispered. It knew my name. In the dream, the girl, she called me that. Petal Seeker. Her grandmother closed her eyes. Then it's begun again. After all these years. What's begun? Kaelen asked. The remembering. That night, the dream deepened. Kaelen stood at the edge of a great forest, one not found on any map. The trees rose like cathedral spires. The stars above were unfamiliar, ancient constellations long forgotten. And the girl was there again. Aira. Not just a dream. She knew it. You found the petal, Aira said, smiling warmly. I hoped you would. What is it? An echo. A breath of the grove. It remembered you. Kaelen reached out to touch her hand, but Aira shimmered like delight, not fading, just woven from something softer than real. I want to come with you, Kaelen whispered. You don't need to, Aira said. The grove is coming to you. Suddenly, the forest behind Kaelen responded. A flicker of green, soft wind, the smell of earth and light. Not a vision. Something growing. Wake soon, Aira said. The roots are reaching. Elsewhere. Aira awoke with her heart racing. She's real, she said to Nib. I met her. The Petal Seeker? He asked, blinking. Aira nodded. She holds part of the grove now. Not from me, from the world. It's choosing again. Nib was quiet for a long time. Then it's time you learned what happens after you plant the seed. Aira tilted her head. What do you mean? Nib's expression, for once, was serious. You've awakened the grove. Now you must bind it, or it will scatter. Far away, Kaelen walked out before dawn to the circle of standing stones, the ones no one remembered building. The silver petal rose from her hand. The sky held its breath, and beneath her feet, the roots began to pulse. The sky was still ink-dark when Aira stepped into the heart of the grove. At her feet, the soil thrummed with memory. Above, the trees leaned in as if holding their breath. Nib sat on a mossy stone beside her, silent for once, watching her every movement. What is the binding? Aira asked softly. Nib's eyes glinted. It's not a spell, not a ritual. It's a song. A song? One that remembers all voices, human, root, wind, water, even silence. The grove sings it when it chooses a bearer, but only you can begin it. Aira closed her eyes. She thought of the lantern's warmth. She thought of the seed pulsing in the earth. She thought of Kaelen, the girl in the dream, standing bravely among stone and wind, the petal glowing in her hand. And then Aira sang. It wasn't a song with words. It began as a hum, low, steady, drawn from somewhere deeper than breath. The trees responded first, leaves shivering softly, branches creaking in harmony. Then came the roots, vibrating gently beneath her bare feet. Then the wind, swirling in slow spirals, echoing her tone like a distant flute. And finally, the light. Soft strands of golden brightness weaved through the air, spinning around her like a dance. Her wristband flared once, and from the trees lanterns began to bloom. Hundreds, thousands, like stars falling inward. Far away, Kaelen awoke suddenly. The silver petal had begun to float above her bed. It hummed the same tune, one she hadn't heard, yet somehow remembered. She followed it out into the frostbitten dawn, through the silent village, back to the ring of ancient stones. There something had changed. The stones glowed. She stepped into the circle. The petal hovered at its center, then pulsed once, twice, then shattered into 1,000 sparks that rose into the sky. Kaelen stood frozen. From behind her, a voice echoed, "Petal Seeker." She turned, but no one was there. Only a shadow, long, thin, and cold. In the grove, Aira's song faltered. The wind dropped. The lanterns dimmed. Nib tensed. Something's answered. Something that remembers the silence. Aira's heart pounded. The rot beneath? No, Nib whispered. Older. It's the hollow listen. The part of the world that feeds on forgotten things. Aira's voice shook. Kaelen. She's alone. Nib placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Then bind the grove, Aira. Bind it now, so she won't be. And so Aira sang again, not just to trees, not just to light. She sang to the lonely, the forgotten, the brave. And far away, in a ring of old stones, Kaelen heard it and joined in. 2 voices. 1 grove. The hollow paused in its rise. But it had heard them. And it would come. Kaelen stood in the circle, every breath fighting the frozen morning. The sparks from the petal had vanished into the sky, but something else had taken their place. A presence just beyond sight, watching. The shadow had no face, no shape. It was the absence of shape. A fold in the air. A hunger between thoughts. It did not speak. It listened. You're not part of the grove, Kaelen said, voice barely above a whisper. The air around her thinned. Her words were swallowed, not echoed. Even the wind dared not move. What do you want? She asked. The hollow answered not with words, but with a memory, not hers. A memory of silence. Of laughter that once rang in these hills, now gone. Of names once spoken, now erased. Of petals that once glowed in 1,000 hands, now dust. It wanted forgetting. Far away, in the heart of the grove, Aira stumbled mid-note. The song cracked like a twig beneath snow. Her chest tightened. Kaelen, she gasped. Nib leapt to her side. She's facing it. Alone. Can I reach her? Not with words. only with memory. Aira knelt, pressing her palms into the earth. The lanterns above trembled. Around her, the trees leaned closer. She whispered, "Show her what the grove remembers." In the stone circle, Kaelen fell to her knees. The cold was deep now in her marrow. Her memories blurred. Her grandmother's voice, the smell of tea, the dream of the grove. The hollow moved closer. "You can't take me," Kaelen said. "I know who I am." But the hollow didn't want her. It wanted what lived through her. The petal's memory, the lantern's echo, the thread between her and the grove. And then, a light. Soft, gentle. A single glowing root pushed up through the frost beneath Kaelen's hand. It wrapped around her wrist, not tightly, but kindly. And from the root came sound, not a song, a laugh. High and warm and unmistakably Aira's. Then a second sound, the rustle of Nib climbing a branch. Then dozens more, wind chimes, river songs, distant lullabies, a grandmother's hum. Memories. The grove remembered. And so did Kaelen. She stood. The hollow shuddered. Not in fear. It could not feel that. But it noticed. That was enough. Aira gasped. She heard. Nib smiled. The grove bound you both. Not by roots. Not by light. By remembrance. So what happens now? Aira asked. Now, Nib said, as the lanterns flared above them. The grove awakens everywhere. Far from Kaelen's frost-touched hills and Aira's lantern-lit forest, the world moved on as usual. Cars hummed through streets slick with morning rain. Concrete buildings stretched tall, their windows full of reflections but little light. In a forgotten corner of a rusted city park, behind chain-link fences and vending machines that no longer worked, a sprout appeared. Small, golden, softly humming, and no one noticed. Not yet. But someone would. In a high-rise apartment above the street's drone, a boy named Thomas stared at a flickering lamp. He had not dreamed in 3 years. Since his mother left. Since his father stopped singing. Since the silence became routine. But tonight something was different. The lamp's flicker synced with a sound, not from the room, but from under it. A pulse. Steady. Like a heartbeat. Or a hum. He pressed his ear to the floor. He heard a voice. Not words, but warmth. A memory he didn't know he had. Elsewhere, Aira stood at the center of the grove with Nib at her side. The roots now moved with more certainty, curling outward like fingers through unseen soil, crossing rivers, roads, and ruins. It's spreading, she said. I feel it. Nib nodded, watching a flock of glow moths spiral into the air. The seeds you planted in memory, they've taken hold. They awaken not with shovels and water, but with longing, with listening. Aira frowned gently. But the hollow is listening too. It always has, Nib whispered. But now it learns. In the city, Toma lay still in his bed. The hum had entered his dreams now. He saw a forest in his mind, tall trees and warm light. He saw two girls, one with a lantern, one holding a silver spark. He saw a shadow, long and thin, whispering not with words, but with forgetting. He opened his eyes just as the lamp flickered once more and burst softly, not in sparks, but in petals. Dozens of tiny, glowing petals scattered across his bedspread. And Toma did the one thing the hollow never expected. He remembered. Back in the grove, Aira felt the echo. Another child just joined. Nib smiled. The city this time. What should I do? Nothing. Aira blinked. Nothing? The grove doesn't spread by force. It spreads by invitation. Aira stepped into the roots, now glowing with distant lights. Then I'll find them. The ones who remember, or want to. And in a stone circle far to the north, Kaelen traced a glowing ring into the frost. The hollow still lingered, somewhere deep, watching. But now she had more than a petal. She had the first leaf. It bloomed quietly in her hand, shaped like a heart, lined with silver. The grove had given her its next gift, not for defense, but for planting.